Welcome into another episode of the Fourth and Goal podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Drew, along with my co-host, Rob. Say hi to the people, Rob.
Good to see you, folks. Good to see you.
Okay, so we're back after one of the most wild weeks of the football season. We are going to get all into that. Ton of upsets. I think actually more underdogs won than favorites, which is absolutely absurd. But before we get into all of those matchups and everything that happened in this week's slate of games, let's quickly talk about some of the news and notes. And I personally want to start with some of the throwback jerseys we saw this week. Oh my God, I was obsessed. The Colts one was my favorite. Like, can they just make that their permanent jersey, please?
Agree. Where did those come from, by the way? They call them throwbacks. I don't recall seeing these before. I can't tell you what era of Colts those were, but I'll tell you one thing. They were slick, and they looked good out there. That was by far the most entertaining game of the week, and I don't think that was on anyone's lottery card for best game of the week. Was a Cleveland Browns, Indianapolis Colts shootout going down to the last seconds in, as you mentioned, just an aesthetically pleasing set of jerseys out there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would have guessed that Gardner Minshew and the Indianapolis Colts would have been able to score like 38 points against the Cleveland Browns after what they had just done to the 49ers the week before.
With Jared Allen being an absolute beast out there, right? It's not like that wasn't like a subpar game for him. He was jumping over linemen, blocking shots. He was rushing the quarterback. Like, Minshew was under fire in that game.
Yeah, are you talking about Myles Garrett?
Myles Garrett. What did I say?
You said Jared Allen. I'm like, what?
Sorry, it's early in the week. We're getting there. Yes. Who's also 28, they said in the broadcast, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
That, Myles Garrett's only 28. What a freak.
Well, yeah, because he was the same draft. He was first overall pick in the Mahomes draft. Side note, that was a hell of a draft. You had Mahomes, you had Myles Garrett, Christian McCaffrey was in that draft. I think Cooper Kupp came from that draft. Like, it's a wild draft.
Yeah, it's like one of those ones you look back on. The NBA's got a couple of those. They'll go a season or two with a miss, and then all of a sudden it's a draft where there's 14 Hall of Famers or All-Stars, like perennial All-Stars that stay in the league for a decade.
The only one in recent years that I think could compete, I think it was the draft at 2 or 3 years after that. I think it's the 2020 draft that had like Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Justin. Was Justin Fields in that one too, or was he a different one? I don't remember.
No, he was the next one.
Oh, he was the next one. But like either way, it was like, it was Jordan Love, right? And we thought he might be, but no. Yeah. But like, 3 elite quarterbacks in one draft. Yeah, that's always going to be looked upon highly because that's literally 1/10 of the entire NFL's quarterback population and like 1/4 of the elite quarterbacks.
It's like that 04 draft when you had Eli, Phillip Rivers, Big Ben. Those guys would go on to dominate the conversation for so long, right?
Exactly. Well, I could talk about all these drafts and all these quarterbacks all day, but a few other news.
But let's get back to the other uniforms, though.
Oh, yeah.
The Eagles, the Eagle light green, the lime green Eagle jerseys are just an all-time classic. That's one of the best jerseys that you can like rock around the streets too. You know what I mean? Like this was the Mark Wahlberg era where they were letting just random Philly bartenders onto the field to try and play wide receiver.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, if I start to like. If we ever get big enough and I start to buy out like a jersey for every team, if I'm getting an Eagles jersey eventually, I'm getting it in that Kelly green, and I'm 100% getting those new Colts jerseys. That's not even a question.
Will you get a Michael Vick one at least in the old green? I think that's a clean jersey. That's a clean jersey.
Clean in some ways, really dirty in others.
Hey, but isn't that Philadelphia in the end?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know what? I won't pick on
what other good throwback jerseys did we have? Unfortunately, neither of our teams, the Steelers and the Lions, have very good throwbacks because we just kind of had these timeless classic jerseys. But any others that caught your eye?
I mean, a lot of people talked about it. Wasn't this week. It was the week before, the Buccaneers cream jerseys, like the creamsicle.
I think those are overrated. I agree. I'm throwing it out there.
I'm with you. Everyone talks about those jerseys as if they're like so amazing. And I'm like, honestly, no. Like these Eagles ones, those Colts ones, absolute fire. Those old Buccaneers ones, I'm like, honestly, I kind of like the red ones better.
Yeah, me too. And like even the pirate themselves looks more like a ballerina or tap dancer type of. He's not like a gangster pirate. He's like a
He
span
looks like a
like
pirate from Broadway Pirates of Penzance.
yeah, exactly something of that nature.
Deep cut that 95% of people ever listening to this will not understand that reference.
In good news, I believe this is the first week in which we didn't lead off with terrible injuries, which I think is a great welcome to week 7. That's wonderful. There was maybe a couple, but I can't even think of any noteworthy, at least not in fantasy, at least not kind of the star players. So that's a
Yeah.
good step in the right direction.
Yeah, nothing of major note that's been like, oh no, this guy went down. What are we ever going to do? So that's always good. But a few more news and notes we want to get into. After, I think it was yesterday, Chris Olave arrested going 70 in a 35. He is out. He shouldn't miss any game time, but, this is just some dumb people being dumb.
This is something that I have still not understood about NBA or NFL or athletes in general at that level. Why do you not have a driver? You have a nutritionist, you have a personal trainer, you have all of these things. I understand that these guys don't want to get Ubers because they don't want to get hassled by random strangers, and they don't want to call the NFL's like DUI policy because that like counts against them and contracts. That's what they all think. But like, don't these guys have enough money to be paying a driver to take them around when they want to go out at night? Like, what are you doing driving 70 miles in a 35 during the season? Like, I don't know. I don't get this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the whole driver thing, but either way, like, yeah, what? There is nobody on earth who should be driving that much over. Like, in Canada, that would be the equivalent of, like, 50, 55, maybe even 60 over the speed limit. Like, that is literally near speed. That would be considered speed racing. You would lose your car. You would lose your license. Like, I don't know what the rules are down there in New Orleans, but, like, up here in Canada, you're losing everything. Like, you are not driving, my friend, after that shit.
Or like go to a racetrack on your day off and drive really fast there. Right?
Yeah.
Like you have the money. That's what I'm saying. It's like these guys have the money and the means to go like, I don't know, fucking jump out of a plane and skydive or do whatever it is that's going to get your like that adrenaline junkies that a lot of these guys are up that I think whatever makes them drive at these paces. Henry Ruggs, the fourth, being probably the prime example.
Oh,
of just,
God.
Like, that guy needed more than just a fucking driver. But
yeah,
anyways.
and I mean, let's not get into the whole Jalen Carter incident before the draft. Same fucking shit. But, either way,
word of advice: NFL prospects invest in a driver, perhaps.
Not even invest in a driver. Just don't be
or
an
like
idiot
a
on the
homie with
road.
a DUI.
Yeah,
or like a homie that like doesn't drink and can drive you around. It doesn't have to be like a professional. Just find one in the crew. Find someone from your entourage, like Turtle from literally the movie and show Entourage, right, guys? Come on.
Exactly. Okay, last thing we want to get into before we move on to the weekly recap is Kareem Jackson's suspension. He's been suspended after being fined 4 times through 6 games for overly aggressive hits this season. What are your thoughts on this whole situation?
Again, it feels hypocritical of the NFL to be targeting players for suspensions when they are expanding to 17-game seasons. They're throwing in Thursday night games. They are having people travel continentally to get said games, which are home/away. So as someone who is suspicious of the NFL leadership, this seems like another sort of like scapegoat in the safety game. However, you got to start somewhere, perhaps. And if you're going to just be teeing off on these wide receivers, this is no longer the 80s and the 90s when that's something that's not even looked down upon, but kind of revered in the NFL football culture. I think more people want to see that. That's a scary play across the middle when you get the short-armed receiver and kind of the stutter and the twitch or whatever happens there. That's not something we want to see as a fan base anymore. So as players, you have to be cognizant of that. And this is, I think, the first of many to come. Hopefully not. Hopefully people get the idea. But so I have that kind of mixed emotions about it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, he did have four times that he's being fined already. So there comes a point in time where you stop having as much sympathy. But I will say, I do think the NFL is a little harsh on a lot of these. Like, I don't know if Roger Goodell or the people making these decisions in the player safety department have ever played football. Like, I honestly don't, because it is incredibly difficult when you are going full speed to try to knock a ball out of a guy's hands. If he catches it, all of a sudden he doesn't catch it, and it's like you have 2 steps to not hit him at all. It's like, do you know how difficult that is to prevent yourself from smacking it? You're going 100, you're full sprint. You got to stop and avoid in 2 steps in the snap of your fingers, reading that and avoid it. That is not easy. There is, I think, a little too much burden placed on the defensive players for player safety. I understand that it's often the offensive players, and the offensive players are the skill positions and the guys who make money and bring in league revenues, fantasy football, all that. Just, I get it. I understand it from a league revenue perspective, but I do think we got to be show a little bit more heart to defensive players, being like, dude, it is so tough. And like, I can't remember which game it was in, but I think it might have been AJ Brown in the Sunday Nighter. Like, he literally like dropped his head and fucking speared a guy going into the end zone. No call. It's like, if a defender does that, when a defender has a lot less time to try to adjust, they're getting like an unsportsmanlike 15-yard penalty, $20,000 fine. AJ Brown does it, he gets a touchdown and is revered. Like, it might not have been AJ Brown, but yeah.
No, I feel you on that, and I think you raise a really good point about, like, 1, not being able to stop. 2, it's already hard enough to tackle these guys anyways, let alone not hit their head versus their shoulders versus their chest. But I think another big one is, like, on the quarterbacks on these, late hits or personal foul, the roughing the passer things, where, like, these quarterbacks pump fake and do all sorts of crazy shit. So if you're a defensive lineman and you go for that hit and he actually throws the ball, you get the 15-yard penalty. But if he does some sort of pump fake, or if you were to and you were to stop because you didn't want to get that penalty, then he does a twist and he goes out and he scrambles for 30 yards with his first down anyways, right? So there's a combination of just, like, you have to recognize that if the play gets made, these players need to go make the hit. Just because the player drops the ball or throws the ball, now you hit them. That's a split-second thing that happens, as you said. And then the timing of these plays sometimes feels like it's throwing these games, right? Like, I know we talk about this a lot in the NFL with the refs and how these calls, the more we're getting more tech-oriented. Like, I really think some of these need to be going to the booth. Not that we like that anymore, but at some point, when it's that split second, and I know player safety, that's the thing, the NFL's always resting on this player safety as, like, the pinnacle of, like, decision making, right? Or like the basis of all decisions in these kind of nature. And it's impacting games. Now it's impacting this young man's livelihood. I don't know where to go. I agree that safety is great, but man, it's tough to be a defender in today's NFL.
Especially on the QB hits, like the roughing the passer. I think that should go to booth review 100% of the time. I'm not a big fan of booth review for all penalties, but that's one that should, because it's a 15-yard penalty, because it's an automatic first down. Those have changed drives. We've seen those change the outcome of multiple games this season already, those calls, and when they were probably bad calls at the end of games that kept drives alive. So I think those should go to booth review. We have seen way too many games, in the same sense that we saw way too many games in the past decided by pass interference. We're now seeing way too many games decided by roughing the passer. I do appreciate that the NFL and refs have started calling a lot more illegal contact, defensive holding, as opposed to pass interference. Reduce the amount of yards it gives. I actually think that's a great change that the NFL and refs have done that has not been talked about enough. But this is another area where it's a 15-yard penalty. It's changing games. We got to figure out a way to make this better.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, but let's move on to our weekly recap. I mean, last week, again, as we said, against the spread, Vegas went 5-8. 5 favorites won out of 13 games.
You know, I talked about this heading into week 6, which is often a finicky week. Maybe with the 17 game schedule, this has now become a week 7 anomaly to be aware of, because yeah, there was something in the water. Actually, I was watching NFL Game Day or one of these shows, the one with Michael Irvin on it, and to a man, all of these, the Terry Bradshaws of the world, I forget which five guys were on this particular program,
Sure.
but they were all picking the likes of the Raiders and the Bills. And Michael Irvin went out there and said, you know what? Watch out for these 1-5 home teams, because they could be playing. This is the National Football League any given Sunday, and it's early enough in the year where they could have had a couple off games. And sure enough, the G-Men won at home against the Washington football team. You had the Bears winning at home against the Oakland Raiders. You had the Pats winning at home against the Buffalo Bills, ruining my Survivor. So there was definitely something in the water. I was feeling it this week with underdog bets. I picked the wrong underdogs on my bets, but I did pick enough underdogs in the rest of my bets to come up a game on Vegas. So watch out, LV, where we're coming in. You did not have a good week this week at all, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I tied Vegas. Both Vegas and I went 5-8. I stuck mostly with favorites this week, and that's just how the cookie crumbled. The one that you and I had talked about that I switched my bet was the Jaguars Saints, because I wanted to be opposite of you. Obviously, you had the right call in that game. I did not have the right call. The other one did go my way more so, the Dolphins Eagles. So, we split that 50-50. But I just think some of the games, I want to talk about a few of the teams. Like, obviously, some teams had bad games. Some teams that we thought were good didn't do too well, like the 49ers, the Lions, the Bills. I guess my question for you is, which of these teams are you worried about, and which ones are you like, it's not a worry, they're going to be fine?
I'm actually not too worried about your Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
They had a couple road games that were tough. That was just a trap game of note, and they just played awful and got blown out of the water, and sometimes that happens. I think the Niners are also going through a bit of a tough stretch with some injuries. Let's not forget, they've gotten within essentially 2 field goals of winning both of those games. Brock Purdy has played well despite all that. So I think the Niners are close. The Bills are the ones I'm worried about. We talked a couple of weeks ago about them losing Matt Milano on their defense. I think that's been huge for them. They cannot stop anybody, as seen on that last drive by the Patriots. So their offense is pretty much Allen to Diggs, and if that doesn't work, I don't really know where else they go. Latavius Murray made a bit of a play, a couple plays this last game, but that's a tough division all of a sudden with Miami out there. You're still in the AFC, which is a bit of a meat grinder. So I'm a little worried about the Buffalo Bills in the Northeast there, upstate New York.
Yeah, so I think I'm with you in terms of like the losers of the really good teams, or the teams that we thought were really good going into this that lost. Again, Lions, you're going to lose those kind of games. That's their first game that they haven't won or gone to overtime in. Obviously I'm a Lions fan, but I think I'm a pretty reasonable Lions fan. I've been a Lions fan long enough to know pain, and I'm like, this is not a team that is really showing me pain. This is a team that had an awful game, and I don't want to understate that. Every facet of the game was not working, but that almost makes me feel a little better, because it's like, okay, guess what? We just didn't show up today. That's what happened. We didn't show up. The Ravens did. They won. High wind game in Baltimore on the road.
Right.
There's enough storylines here to make me say I'm not worried yet. Again, we had won 3 straight games by 2 touchdowns or more, or it might have been even 4 straight games by 2 touchdowns. It was 4 straight games by 2 touchdowns or more going into that. So it's like, not a team I'm worried about. 49ers, I think Kirk Cousins played great on primetime. I did say bet on Kirk Cousins in primetime. I didn't bet on him to win, but I did bet on him to put up yards.
And he did.
And he did. But I'm not too worried about the 49ers. They're still a really good team. The Bills, I'm with you, though, because this is 3 straight bad weeks. They got it going only at the very end against the Jaguars in London. And it's like, okay, they're in London. Then they came and barely beat the Giants. And it's like, okay, they're coming back from London. But then you go and you lose to the Pats. Now it's like, okay.
The game they should have won too, right? They needed to hold them from not scoring a touchdown with like 50 seconds to go. And they couldn't do it.
And that's Mac Jones in this Patriots offense. Like, fine, if you have trouble scoring on Bill Belichick, I get it. He tends to be able to shut down what you do really well. And the fact is, the Bills only do one thing really well. So Bill Belichick works against that kind of team. But at the same time, this is 3 straight weeks where you've underperformed. And there is a story there. You lost Matt Milano. You lost Tre'Davious White. You've now lost Dawson Knox. You've lost a lot of key personnel in that team. This is absolutely a team I'm worried about. But I'm also worried about the Dolphins. I talked about this last week. 4 of their 5 wins have come against really bad teams in the NFL. And their other win was by 2 points in week 1 against a 2-4 Chargers team. They've gotten blown out. They've lost by 2 touchdowns or more to the Bills, who we're already talking about that we're worried about, and to the Eagles. Yeah, both decent teams, but they play a decent team, and they get beat pretty badly.
Yeah, there could be a bit of a paper tiger there with the Dolphins. One of those teams, like those old Phoenix Suns teams, where it's like they're fun, they're electric, they put up points, everyone wants to watch them, they're great for fantasy. But at the end of the day, I don't know if they're actually winning any games or going to be much of a threat. That being said, I don't think anyone wants to face them in the playoffs, right? That's the thing about the playoffs. If they can get there, those are the kind of games where it's just, if you're electric, if you can put up big plays, it's any given Sunday, do or die eliminator. So I agree with you. They could have a rough regular season. I think they are potentially going to win that division because of, as we mentioned before, I'm more worried about the Bills than I am the Dolphins.
Sure.
And I'm not worried at all about the Jets or the Pats taking that title. So if the Dolphins can win that division and then maybe secure a home, at least a first home field game, I think they could still be a threat in the playoffs. So I agree with you to some degree that it'll be a rougher regular season. They have a tougher schedule coming up than they did. You can't really have an easier schedule than they did to start the year. But yeah. I'm not counting out the Dolphins yet, quite yet. I do want to see the Bengals this week, though. Speaking of teams that who is going to happen, I don't know. Do you have any other comments on this week before we start looking ahead?
No, I think we can look ahead.
The week past.
I think we can look ahead to week 8. So, yeah, you're talking about you want to talk about the Bengals game. I think that's a good one to start with because they're going to the 49ers, who have lost 2 straight games. That's going to be Sunday afternoon.
They are. And we have split ourselves again. I think we're the most contentious on the Bengals throughout the year. We just do not agree on this team. No. I have them winning. I just cannot quit this fucking Bengals team. They're coming off of a bye. I'm hoping that that's given them some rest. They're heading out, I think, to the West Coast a little early so that they'll be able to. And again, East Coast teams moving to the West Coast historically do better than West Coast teams moving to the East Coast. Remember that, betting folks at home. So I'm not too, and again, I think the Niners are a bit vulnerable right now. I can see them as one of those teams that starts out hot, loses a couple midseason games, and then closes hot, right? Yeah. And so I think, and this is kind of do or die for the Cincinnati, especially after the Browns have won and the Steelers have won. Those are 2-4-2 teams.
And the Ravens won.
Bengals and the Ravens won, right? So like I said, I've been saying all along, toughest division in football. So if these Bengals really want to show up and Joe Cool wants to push for Pat Mahomes' title, this is the game they got to do it. Just like the Vikings this week beat the Niners, if they can come out into San Francisco, actually into the South Bay, let's go Santa Clara, and beat the 49ers, that's what I'm expecting them to do. I think it's going to be a close game, but Joe Cool's going to pull it out.
Yeah, I still got the 49ers. I have not quit on the 49ers. Again, like, what do they have? How they lost both these games? They lost from a 41-yard missed field goal to win that game against the Browns after there was some pretty suspect calls that led to the Browns' touchdown to take the lead in the first place in that game. Last week, you had 2 Brock Purdy interceptions near the end of the game, but, like, they should have had leads earlier. Christian McCaffrey fumbles in the red zone, giving the Vikings the ball. The Vikings are able to get a massive touchdown with 7 seconds left in the first half to take a bigger than 10-7 lead. They missed a field goal in the first half. Guess what? They were at the 40-yard line with time left on the clock, down 5. They hit that field goal, they're down 2. Then they just need to hit a field goal again. Like, they're just making inopportune mistakes. But this is not a team that's getting the doors blown off. And the Bengals are coming off a bye. Hopefully they've been able to do it. They need to show that they've done it, but I still trust the 49ers too much. Maybe, but I still have them winning this game at home.
I can see them winning this game. I'm being a little contrarian again. I'm sticking to this Bengals team. Joe Burrow, hopefully, is a little bit healthier. I acknowledge that this is a bit of a reach. But why don't we take a look at your picks, Drew?
Yeah, so we're going to put my picks on the board. Again, I don't like picking very in tandem with Vegas, but I try to do my picks blind of Vegas. Like, just who do I think is going to win? I decide who I think my toss-ups are, and usually whatever I have my toss-ups with, I pick opposite Rob just because I like to be contrarian to Rob more than anything.
And the way I'm betting this year, you might as well. Fuck.
So I only have a couple upsets. I have the Titans at home upsetting the Falcons. I know they just traded away Kevin Byard. They might trade away more guys before this week, but I still like the Titans even without Ryan Tannehill. I don't think Ryan Tannehill's been that good. I trust Derrick Henry. I get this is tough, but like Desmond Ritter's not a world beater either, so this is a bit of an upset. And then my other upset is actually me picking your Steelers to take down the Jaguars. So other than that, I have everything else. We'll talk in a little bit about my pick of the week, the Chargers at home on Sunday Night Football beating the Bears. But Rob, let's quickly bring up your picks now to compare. And I want to start with the fact that you are picking the Jaguars on the road to beat your 4-2 Steelers.
I don't like that pick, but the Jags, again, played Thursday night, which means they got a little bit of a rest heading into this week. I think mini bye, the quote-unquote mini bye. Steelers had a bye heading into this week with the Rams, which I think had something to do with our resounding victory there in SoFi, where the Steelers travel particularly well. We travel well anyways. But as we mentioned, the Los Angeles franchises are not the strongest home bases these days. And again, I love this Steelers team. I'm trying not to pick with my heart. We perennially fucking lose games to the Jags, whether it's Blake Bortles or David Garrard, or there's a litany of Jaguar nobodies that have come in to Steel Town and taken a game. I can just see this as a game that we lose in some fucking ridiculous fourth quarter to what. If the Steelers win, obviously I'll be happy, but I just kind of had to take the Jags here. I hate to do it, but
fair enough.
I'll feel better. I felt better about this.
Again, the Steelers are going to do what the Steelers always do. We already know they're going to finish 9-8. Given the fact that they're 4-2, it does make sense based on the odds that they are going to lose this game. I understand. Right. Where you're coming from.
And there's other teams, and I think we mollywomp on bad teams because of our defense. And Trevor Lawrence, I think this Jags team is pretty good. I know they lost to the Texans, but we found out that team might be better than we thought. And so I was pretty big on the Jacksonville Jaguars preseason. I had Doug Peterson as my coach of the year. So I just think this is a powerhouse of a team that's coming into Pittsburgh. It's no longer Heinz Field, unfortunately. It's Acrisure Stadium, which is way worse.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think they're coming into Acrisure, and they might steal a win. But don't count out the Steelers. Never do. I'm not betting any money on this game. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And the one other thing before we get into the last game I want to talk about here, you have the Chiefs beating the Broncos in Denver. To note here, Rob, you have picked the Chiefs before in week 3 to win, but you did lose out on Survivor already. So I think you're just picking who you think the most likely to win it is at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Because my Survivor pick last week being the Buffalo Bills, we're no longer able to. Now my locks are just going to be the best team.
Sure.
I think that's fair, everybody. I mean, I could continue to do Survivor, but once you're out, it kind of feels like you've lost.
It's like, can you pick the Bills again? Can you not? It becomes questionable. But either way.
Yeah, honestly, speaking of the Bills, I think the Bucs could upset the Bills. The Bucs are on the road.
It's Thursday night. And anything can happen Thursday night.
It's Thursday night. Anything can happen. The Bills just had a tough couple losses games. The Bucs can be a frisky team depending on which Baker shows up. I did take the Bills there, but I wouldn't be surprised at an upset. Another one where I took the Texans over the Panthers, the battle of the number one picks. But I do think the Panthers could steal that against the Texans, right?
Sure.
That could be one of these frisky.
In
In
Carolina.
Carolina, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the
And then
one
the other game that's kind of like that is Colts Saints, where it's like, nah, neither one of those teams inspire me too much. It could go either way. I ended up taking the Gardner Minshew train,
I
but I could see a big game from tomorrow or
I,
whatever.
I'm with you there. I think that was a tough one. I picked the Colts. I decided I wanted to take them, ride the Minshew mania after their week last week.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was frankly surprised that all three of you, me and Vegas, picked that one. But the game I do want to get
Yeah.
into very quickly before we move on to Uncle Bob's bets, because we are running well behind schedule, is the Bears at Chargers. Chargers are my lock of the week. And you, my friend, are picking the Bears on the road Sunday Night Football to win that game. So tell me a little bit
Let's
about
go.
that.
First off, fuck the Chargers. Fuck LA. We've already talked about this. I'm still a little bitter about that Dallas Cowboys loss. I don't think Herbert's that great. I think he's a big dude who's chilling out in Southern California. He doesn't win any games, let's tell you that much. And you know what? But this really comes down to the Bagmeister, Tyson Badgett from Shepherd University, baby. This man is turning around the fate of the Chi-Town Bears. You heard it here first. They're going to go on the road against, I think, which is a pretty bad team. This Chargers team does not excite me anymore. It never has. It never will. They are going to go into LA. As we know, there will be lots of Chicago fans there. And Tyler fucking Tyson Badgett will be victorious in Southern California. You heard it here first. I'm not even taking the spread there. That's a straight win for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, to me that's wild. Again, I'm picking the Chargers. Obviously, they're 2-4. This is more so me betting against the Bears. I've been betting against them all season, as everybody who's been listening knows. I do not like the Bears. I think they are the worst team in football, and I have not wavered from that opinion. This is literally me saying Chargers are at home. I think they'll be able to beat a bad Bears team. And guess what? As you get into week 8 in Survivor and you're still alive, I've burned through a lot of the best teams. I've burned through the Chiefs. I've burned through the 49ers. I've burned through the Seahawks. Burned through a lot of these teams. Like the Ravens burned through against the Cardinals. Like I've burned through a lot of the top teams. And I am holding the Lions for when they play the Bears at home. That is very intentional.
And look, it's very likely the Chargers are going to smack the Bears. This is kind of like a Gardner Minshew mania sort of thing. I'm taking Shepherd University and Tyson Badgett here. He did play pretty well. He was extremely efficient. I think that's the kind of player and team that can take it to the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's go, Bears. Go Bears. Go Bears.
Oh, God, no. Staley the Bear, their mascot's name. What a fucking dumb mascot name. But either way, let's quickly move over to Best Bets with Bookie Bob.
You know what it is. Best Bets with Bookie Bob, the favorite corner that finishes off all of our podcasts and is the talk of the Twitch stream for those of you that join us. So we are sitting with the living legend, Drew Robertson here, who has a whopping $207 profit of a margin of 259%. Good, sir. And I promise you guys, we have tweeting these ahead of time. This man is placing these bets validly, legally, well, through the legal platforms available to him. And these are legitimate 259%. So throw all your money in the mutual fund of Drew's betting. Meanwhile, over here, Bookie Bob, Uncle Bob himself, is minus $4.25 for a whopping negative 12.16% gross margin. I started out strong, and I have just been calling them off. I pick great picks in my weekly bets, and then I bet on the ones that lose. I can't seem to help myself. And as all good gamblers know, when the table's bad and you're losing lots of money, what do? You double the fuck down. So this week, I'm wagering 25 whole dollars. That is a quarter of the kitty. In fact, it's even more than a quarter considering I'm in the red. It's about close to 18% of my, about 30% of my available stock. And so we are in a variety of different bets here. I'll just go through a couple. I like a Vikes money line for $5. They're minus 10. They're playing well. They're against Green Bay. No one's afraid of that team. I'm taking a favorites parlay. We got Eagles, Chiefs, and Ravens at plus 107 for $5. I have a fun little prop bet here, which is the number 1 and number 2 picks going against each other. CJ Stroud, 2 touchdowns, and Bryce Young, 1 touchdown. My last 2 bets, I have the Rams and the Giants. Ugh, don't even like the sound of that. both of them with the spread. So that's Rams plus 6.5, Giants plus 3 to give me plus 243. Got $5 on that. And my last one is Puka and CeeDee Lamb going up against each other for plus 175, and I got $5 on that. So for those of you keeping score at home, it's a lot of bets out there. We got the big heavy money favorites together. We got a couple of frisky underdogs together. We got a Vikes outright, and then 2 fun little prop bets from Uncle Bob, the absolute degenerate. Daddy needs a new pair of shoes, and week 8 is where he's gonna do it.
Yeah, and as for me, I looked at the weekly specials this week. I didn't like a single one of them. There are very few bets this week I liked. So I went with a bit of a long shot that I think has the chance to go. It's a Thursday night game. It's Stephon Diggs, 100 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. And then Kincaid, 40 receiving yards. That's at plus 807 for $5. Again, I look at this. The Bills have one game plan. Get the ball to Stephon Diggs. And so I'm sitting there and saying, okay, I'm basically betting Diggs gets 100 yards and a touchdown, and Kincaid with Dawson Knox going down with an indefinite injury. That is the one guy who did come down with a big injury this week. Kincaid will be the guy. Gabe Davis hasn't done much in that offense lately. I just need Kincaid to get 40 yards. I think it's good odds at plus 807. That's why I took it. The one other bet that I almost definitely will be making, and you will see on Twitter, but it is just not posted yet, is Josh Reynolds over receiving yards. Uncle Bob and our Twitch streams know I have been pushing Josh Reynolds overs on receiving yards. He is 6 for 6 this year. I just want to give you an understanding. Like, every week, if you bet this, it's basically a guaranteed hit, even when he doesn't get play. Listen to his routes run. In 6 games, he's run 204 routes. Compare that to Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy that everybody loves. 228. He barely runs less routes than Amon-Ra, yet Amon-Ra has over-unders of like 80 yards. Josh Reynolds has over-unders of 30. Compare him to, he has more routes run per game than all of these players. Tyreek Hill, Rashee Rice, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, and he is nowhere close to their over-under. As well, he gets yards on his targets. He's averaging like 18 yards per target. He only has 1 catch on the season that has not been for either a first down or a touchdown. The Lions go to him in big plays, big moments. He runs routes. He makes catches. He hits his overs, and I'm smashing that as long as it's in similar range to what it's been every week thus far.
I mean, that one stat about first downs or touchdowns is pretty wild.
Yeah.
I have him on a fantasy team. I like this. I might be placing this bet as well. As we said, Daddy does need a new pair of shoes. And so the more shots you take, the more shots you make, baby. Let's go. That is the gambling rule number 1. You can't win if you don't play.
Yeah, the one thing I will say as well, because Rob's given me a lot of compliments on my betting. My betting has not been as good as it seems in here. The problem is, when I do live streams, I make bets in the middle of the games, and I always lose those ones. I hit my ones that I make in here, and I make pregame on Twitter. I hit them pretty consistently. But when I go into the big games, when I'm watching it live and I place those bets, oh, I should really just stop placing those bets, my friend, because I'm losing bad on those.
I do the same thing, too. I get excited about these live stream games. I want to participate in the chat, have some fucking money out there. I ended up placing. And this week was the worst because that Thursday night game I did so well. Even the bets I didn't place hit. And this is the opposite of last week. Last week I had a lot of bad breaks. This week I just flat out lost bets or flat out won bets. But I won the first game's bet, so I walked in the weekend thinking I was on water, walking on water, absolute firecracker, and then I proceeded to lose every single bet on the weekend. So I'm just throwing them all out there. I think if this strategy doesn't work this week, I definitely will have to pull it back a little bit, play it tight to the chest, maybe one tight bet here and there every week until we can inch closer to the money. But this is the week, as we know, when the table is hot or not, you just got to keep going for it. That is the best bets with Bookie Bob. We are looking forward to making some money, folks. We're looking forward to week 8. Thank you so much for joining us. Drew, do you have any last word for the good people?
Nope. That is everything. Again, you can, if you're watching this podcast, you're obviously on YouTube. You can follow us here as well. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Fourth and Goal 101. As well, we do live stream Twitch watch alongs to all the primetime games. That's Monday night, Thursday night, and Sunday night over on Twitch at Fourth and Goal 101 as well. You can find us there. It's a good time. We have a good community. We have a Discord there, all of that. So please come join us, come follow us, help us grow and make this an annual weekly thing.
Let's go. Thanks for joining, everybody. Take care.
Okay.
Go Steelers.
Lions.